Hello, I am Paula Bennett and welcome to my New Zealand Herald podcast, Ask Me Anything. Now, one thing I've learnt in life is it's never too late to learn something new. So on this podcast, I talk to people from all walks of life to hear about how they got to where they are, get some advice and guidance on some of life's biggest questions. Next week, the New Zealand International Comedy Festival gets underway, and this year, one of the international comedians is Adam Kay. Adam is a former junior doctor turned BAFTA winner, best-selling author, comedian, TV writer and performer. You are bound to remember his 2017 book, This Is Going to Hurt. It sold literally millions of copies. It's been turned into a television show and is also the name of the stand-up comedy he'll be performing here in Auckland. Adam Kay joins me from his tour of Australia. Hi, Adam.
Hello.
How's Australia treating you?
So far, so good. Yeah, I'm in Melbourne at the moment, having a lovely old time.
Oh, I love Melbourne. It's a great city. Great city.
Really
Okay, I do a bit of housekeeping. It is 2 rules. First is I'm allowed to ask you anything, but the good news is you don't have to answer.
Okay.
Well, it's the name of the podcast, so I was like, well, how else can I do? And the second is that I call this the no judgy zone, so we just, I don't know, it means we can gossip and not be judgmental.
Perfect.
Hey, let's ease in with some quick fire questions. Let's do the classic. If you could invite anyone to dinner, dead or alive, who would it be?
I'd choose someone alive.
Yeah, well, that's probably more interesting.
Yeah, fine.
Who would you have dinner with?
Well, who do I have to choose someone? Oh, that's too specific. I don't know. I probably wouldn't choose anyone famous because having hung out in the media for a few years now, I find that the more famous someone is, the more boring someone is and the more of a letdown they are. So I think I'm probably fine with the mates I've already got.
Yeah, and they talk about themselves quite a lot, eh?
That's the thing, isn't it? That's the thing. It's their own, you can hang. I know I'm not being very quick fire here, but you can meet some celebrity you've always wanted to speak about. You hang out with them for 20 minutes and realise they've not asked you a single question about you. You're like, oh wow, amazing.
Yeah. My husband is a bit of an introvert, but he used to occasionally go to political events with me, not very often, but he'd say, oh, it's fine, I don't have to talk because all they want to do is talk about themselves. And I think, yeah, that's fair. What would you cook for them? Would you cook? Are you a cook?
I'm not a very good cook, so it depends how much I like them. I've got a couple of emergency dishes that I can make if backed into a corner, and I think I can make an all right sort of jalapeno macaroni cheese sort of effect.
Quite like the sound of that. Says she who hasn't had lunch. That sounds quite good. Okay, let's get to know you a bit better in the first half, and then the second half, let's talk a bit more about, our medical systems and what we're doing and how we're getting that so terribly wrong. But let's start with the switch from doctor to a writer and comedian. I mean, how did that happen? How do you go from, all those years of studying medicine and working in it to then becoming a comedian?
Yeah, I think my parents were quite interested in that decision as well. So basically, I worked on a labour ward back home in the UK in the NHS. And I was the most senior doctor on this ward one weekend, and I had a really, really bad day at work. And I'm not going to go into all the details. You don't want to hear that, but all essentially you ever want from every case, minimum, is a healthy mum and a healthy baby. And this was one of the awful situations when we ended up with neither of those two things. And I just sort of realised that I didn't have, the emotional exoskeleton to deal with the bad stuff that comes with the job when it gets really bad. And so I stepped away for what I thought was probably only going to be a few months, but ends up being a permanent move away from it. And why comedy? I guess I'd never really done anything other than medicine since I was at school. And the only other thing vaguely approaching a skill set I could identify was that I'd tried bits and bobs of stand-up comedy over the years. And I thought, well, if not now, then when? So yeah, gave it a go, and I'm still still plugging at it.
Were you the funny guy at school?
I probably was, but I think as a coping mechanism, as a defense mechanism more than anything else. I think I was never the sportiest guy, the coolest guy, the handsome guy, the anything guy. And so my way of sort of dealing with the stuff that's thrown at you and the nastier events and the nastier people was just to divert with a laugh. And I think I've used humor as a coping mechanism in all sorts of ways my whole life, but that certainly started back then.
Yeah. So what do you, I mean, your success is huge, and I say that because it's true. It's an absolute fact. So what do you put that huge success down to? I mean, starting with the book and then onto your stand-up and TV career, did you ever imagine that you would be coming to New Zealand in a comedy festival being a author that sold millions of books and has a TV show about their books?
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, the book came out. The book was the first thing that led to the telly and the everything else, and it came out in quite an unusual way. In that, I kept all these diaries the entire time that I was working as a doctor. And I don't really know why I thought I was keeping them at the time, but in retrospect, again, it was my way of coping. I was looking for the light amongst the dark. I was, I'd have a bad day and I'd write down the silly and the funny and the disgusting. And then that, when I revisited those diaries later on, that's what became the book. But I had no idea that it would have anything like the impact that it did. And I suspect there's a couple of things at play there. First of all, we all, rightfully, wherever we live in the world, have a love and a respect for the people who look after us. And I think there's an interest in what happens, behind the blue curtain. And so I think that interest adds to it. And also, I haven't invented the medical memoir by 1,000 years, but I did it in, I think, a relatively funny way. And I think but I think basically what I'm saying is people like a disgusting story. And so I think those two things added together, and that probably contributed to people liking the book a bit.
Yeah, well, in respects, parts of it's horrific, right? And particularly if you are a patient or think you might be one. I've been talking to friends about talking to you, today and saying that I was going to, and they'd just go, God, it just made me terrified of thinking that I might have to go into hospital. And here is someone that is just so incredibly overworked and under-resourced, having to look after me. Did you get that sense?
I mean, so there was a slightly political reason for writing the book. I'm not sure how well the news travels, but at the time I wrote it, 2016, there was a junior doctor strike back home, and basically, the doctors were striking about their working conditions, which they thought were making it unsafe for patients. And the government was saying, "Oh, the doctors are being greedy and the doctors are being lazy." And I found it heartbreaking as someone who'd obviously been in the system, experienced it, and was now consuming the media from the outside. I just thought that the doctors weren't getting their side of the story across. So what I wanted to do, alongside the funny, was also to get across the idea that these were not greedy people and these were not lazy people, and these were people trying their hardest in a system that was so starved of funds and resources that it was making it very, very difficult. So, whilst on the front cover of the book and whatever it'll say, "This is funny," quote from whichever celebrity, ultimately it's also a sad book in a lot of ways, and it's potentially harrowing in terms of what it's saying about the state of healthcare systems, I guess, all around the world.
And without people like you, it's not going to change. Because do you feel like there's a sense of those, particularly when you went in the more junior roles, that if you did complain or if you tried to stand up and sort of say this is broken and I can't cope, that it's kind of those ones that have got to the top looking down and going, well, I coped with it and I got to where I am, and so you just need to roll your sleeves up and do some more hours?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There were a lot of dinosaurs at the top, and I think things are getting better, but I don't think we're there yet. And so, like, I talk very openly in the book about the reason I left. I put my heart on my sleeve, and I got loads of messages from doctors saying, until I read that at the end of your book, I thought I was the first doctor who'd ever cried in a locker room, who'd ever cried in the toilet after a shift. And the truth of it is, almost every doctor finds himself in some point in that locker room. But the fact no one talks about it makes it feel very isolating. And I was really, proud to have sort of broken that shell a bit and hear all these people say that this was common. But at the same time, I did get some messages from older doctors, only a couple of dozen, but enough to make me think, wow, I do still need to be saying this. People saying, what did you think was going to happen? Man up, lovely expression. Grow a pair, lovely expression. So there is still an issue there. But no, as I say, I think I'm feeling positive that, we now accept that it is a problem. You cannot ignore mental health in any walk of life.
Yeah, I mean, I can slightly relate to it just from having been in that political sphere, and it's definitely getting better. But, when I first went in 2005, it was very much, if you said, wow, I'm just getting a lot of abuse or I'm getting a lot of this, you would get from some of the dinosaurs, well, roll your sleeves up and get, what were you expecting? You're the one that put yourself out there, and you'd think, well, but...
You can excuse anything if you've got that attitude. That's a one-size-fits-all approach to ignoring everything in life, isn't it?
Absolutely. Now, I said I'm going to deal with life's biggest question, so I want to know, did you get to choose Ben Whishaw to play you in the TV series?
I did. Well, I got to beg Ben Whishaw to be me in the TV series. So when I was adapting, I was writing the script. It's quite a different book to the TV show. TV show is quite a lot darker, and I had to make the character more interesting, much as I wanted to make my character sort of an amazing superhero. So as I was writing the script, I had a picture I printed out from Google of Ben Whishaw above my computer, so I could because I had him in my head as I was writing the lines. And then I went out for lunch with him to ask if he might fancy doing the job. And I'm really glad he said yes, because I didn't have a plan B. But I thought he was great.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And a bit of a hunk, I've got to say,
Oh, obviously, I'm going to choose someone extremely attractive to play me.
Absolutely.
If millions of people around the world are going to think that's what I look like, I'm obviously choosing Ben Whishaw.
Well, I mean, it's normally one of my quick fires, but I didn't say, who would you want to get to play you? Because you've already chosen. Yeah. You've chosen the hunk, Hey, tell me about the babies. So you 2 babies, yeah, and only 4 months apart.
That's right. Yeah, they're Ruby and they're Ziggy, and they're back home, and I'm missing them very much. And they're just over a year old.
Wow, that would be full on, is it, for you and your husband? Life must have just gone upside down overnight. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, it. Obviously, lots of our friends have had babies in the past, and we sort of had some idea that it was going to, uproot and upturn everything. But yeah, oh my word, it feels a ridiculous thing to say, but it's the relentlessness. It's the fact that if you're a doctor and you do a 12-hour shift, however tough the shift is, then the shift's over. With the babies, there's the next 12-hour shift starts the next second, and it doesn't seem to stop until you eventually have to panic and go on tour to New Zealand.
Yeah, just so you can actually breathe a little bit and have some time out. Yeah, I hear you completely. But then I'm at the other end now, so I'm a grandmother. So that's all the joys of the love, but I do get to literally hand them back, which is quite fun too. Yeah. Hey, last one for this segment, and then let's get into a little bit of the nuts and bolts and how we can hopefully change the systems a bit, because I think it's the same here in New Zealand as it is in the UK. But do you really not go to the doctor? I read that you said you don't go to the doctor. Do you really not go?
I mean, I'm a bit better than I was, but I think it's fair to say in general that doctors make bad patients. And I'm sure, any healthcare professionals listening will probably be nodding. You end up feeling that it's embarrassing as a doctor to go and see another doctor, like the idea that you should just be able to somehow sort it out yourself. You're worried they'll say, that's not a brain tumor, your hat's just too tight or something. And you'll be like, oh, no, sorry, or how embarrassing. And my dad was a doctor growing up. I think I missed maybe an hour of school across my entire, school career because, he would fix anything in house. I've got a scar on my head from a sort of ham-fisted, repair of a childhood facial injury. I think if I'd needed dialysis, he'd have had a pretty good go at it. So I sort of grew up with that. And so now, in general, I'm a bit like, I'll leave it a few days, see if it sorts itself out.
Yeah, no, I can understand that completely, absolutely. And I tell you what, one of the reasons of getting out of medicine, I'm sure, is that everybody wants to talk to you about their mole, their sore hip, their in social occasions and everywhere. It's weird, eh?
Yeah, there's a bit of that. And, because I worked on labour ward and I worked in subfertility medicine as well. So there was always friends who were getting pregnant or wanting to get pregnant or currently pregnant, and so lots of those. But yeah, that's definitely dried up a fair amount. I don't think anyone trusts me with medical information anymore. So
that's absolutely fine. Okay, well, after the break, we're going to focus a little more on healthcare, and so we'll chat a bit about what you think should be happening next. Okay, I am back with comedian, writer and performer Adam Kay. Now, this all started out, as we said in the first half, because you were a doctor, and healthcare, I've got to say, here in New Zealand is in a mess, and I don't think it is any better in the UK. And so let's explore a bit more, as well as chat about the enormous pressure our health staff are under at the moment. I mean, God, we just hear the stories every single day. We all know people that work in the sector, and you can just see them burning out, yet they feel an absolute responsibility and that they almost can't leave the health sector because they're needed so badly.
It's a huge problem, and it's so upsetting that it's a worldwide problem as well. Because I think when I wrote my book, I thought I was writing a sort of very peculiar story about the NHS, and then it became apparent almost immediately that it wasn't just the NHS. It was problems that are absolutely universal, and not. I wasn't just hearing from the English speaking world. I was getting messages on social media and email and whatever from doctors in in Venezuela and Ukraine and Chad, and everyone saying this could be set on my ward. But obviously, it resonated a lot in Australia and in New Zealand, and lots of people saying the same thing. There isn't enough cash. There aren't enough staff. There's too much pressure on one side. And also on the other side, there isn't enough support for the people who are doing the jobs. And like the mental health tolls on healthcare professions are absolutely extraordinary. I was reading, there was a study in the Australian-New Zealand Journal of Psychiatry in January of last year saying that suicide rates in nurses and midwives over here are twice the level of the general population. And we've got similar statistics back home. We are doing something wrong. We are not looking after the people who are looking after us.
No, and that's horrific, right? And then isn't it also, a little part of it in that they kind of know they're burning out. They know they're not getting the help they need. They know they're not coping, but they almost can't leave the job because they feel so guilty that they're going to leave their colleagues with a bigger workload and patients that so desperately need them. Is there a guilt aspect to staying in the job?
There's a huge amount of that, and what people need to realise is you are doing your patients a disservice by not staying home if you're not feeling right. Because you cannot look after your patients if you're not looking after yourself. And you may think that the best possible thing you can do is go to work when you're feeling 30%, but that's incorrect, because the mistake that you could make in that situation is a lot worse than the hole you leave in the rota. by hospital systems investing in looking after their staff, which they're historically very bad at in terms of, the sort of, emotional support they need, offering people the time off proactively. These organisations can save a huge amount of money, sort of people get back to work an awful lot quicker if they're supported during it. So, like, for instance, I had my bad day at work. I wasn't offered any debrief. I wasn't offered a second off work. I wasn't offered a minute of counselling. I was just expecting to get on with it because that's what doctors do. And so I got on with it because that's what the culture said. And then eventually it fell over. I could not do it anymore and I stepped away. If at that time I was supported, I was told, don't be ashamed to take some time off. Why don't you have a couple of weeks off? Here's someone you can talk to. Then chances are, all the evidence said that someone in that position is much more likely to end up working back at that hospital full time or even 80%. But now there's so many people who are working 0%. And certainly in the UK, you'll be well aware, lots of people emigrate to other countries. And New Zealand's one of those huge destinations. There was a survey in the NHS last year, which said that a third of doctors below consultant grade are going to change the country they work in within 12 months.
Wow.
And I think around half of those either put Australia or New Zealand as their preferred destination. And so people, if the system doesn't work, then people will leave leave it altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you could do, let's pretend it is a magic wand. So money's not the issue, all the rest of it. If there were three things that we could do, next week, then what would you think they would be to better support our health professionals?
Okay, so the first one is a very expensive one, which is there need to be enough staff, because however well supported you are, if you're doing 5 people's jobs, 3 people's jobs, however many people's jobs, you can't do that long term. And so there need to be enough people working there. And we talk about hospitals being well funded. Hospitals aren't buildings and they're not bedpans and they're not MRI scanners. They're the people who work there, and there need to be enough of them. So that's absolutely number one on the list.
Can I just explore that a little bit more though? Aren't we, at the moment, we've got even a shortage of those that are training, and as you said, it's almost a worldwide problem, and aren't we just kind of moving people around the world to fill gaps instead of being able to catch up with the actual numbers that we need? Like, do we just need to be training a whole lot more as well and making it more of an attractive profession?
Well, yeah, we need to be training more people. I think the crisis is in 2 places. It's in recruitment and it's in retention.
Okay.
So it's all very well increasing the number of places in medical schools and nursing schools and midwifery schools, but if the people don't want to stay there, then you're running the bath, but the plug's still out. So you need to make sure that people stay there. And you make sure people stay there by making them enjoy their time at work. Like there's nothing magic about working in healthcare. It's still a job. There's a very powerful draw, the reason anyone goes into it in the first place, which is, you want to help people. And that never goes away. And that's your powerful reason for doing the job. But if enough crap mounts up on the other side of the scale, then eventually you'll be like, I cannot do this anymore. And so you make the job bearable by giving people the support they need in terms of the colleagues they need, and and when they're struggling, you give them the time off. And also, like in my hospital, that one hospital I worked in for a few years, they got rid of like the doctor's mess, as we call it, where you sort of, the place with a sofa where you can just lie back and watch telly for 10 minutes. If you get a bit of, time off overnight, they were just like, this isn't efficient. We could use something else for this room. And they got rid of that. And then obviously morale fell. Yeah. Worked in hospitals where there was no availability of hot food overnight or at the weekends. So you're working a 24-hour shift on a labour ward, and your only food's going to be a can of Sprite and a Twix from a vending machine, and and because they've just closed down the canteen, that at least, it was never going to be the finest food in the world, but at least a plate of chips and beans might be enough to keep you going. So little things like that actually make a disproportionate difference to the enjoyment. And I don't think we really do exit interviews for all of these people who are leaving the profession or leaving the countries they work in. We should be saying, every time someone leaves, what did we do wrong? And we need to, because some of the solutions might be, relatively small tweaks that could make when multiplied up across all the people who leave, would make a huge difference. The cost of those hot chips in the canteen, was very small compared to, recruiting, half a dozen new doctors who are just fed up with working there.
Yeah. Because you just feel so undervalued, right? And it's just constant. So you're dealing with the workload, you're dealing with an emotional toll. It's physical as well. So it's really physical constraining. And then the organisation you're working for and with are not even supporting you with the basics that you need to be able to sustain and do your job. It's kind of crazy, isn't it?
It is. I think that's spot on. And when you say it like that, it sounds like a no-brainer. But I think one of the problems with healthcare systems all across the world is they are so big and they're so long established that it makes it very big. They're very big ships, and a big ship is difficult to change course.
So we talked about enough staff, we talked about recruitment, retention, talked about that sort of support around them and how we make sure that that's all kind of adding up. I mean, pay must be a part of it. You want to feel like you're not having to go and wait tables on the weekend just to pay your rent.
Yeah, that's a big part, and certainly back home, that's a big issue at the moment. There's another round of ongoing strikes in the NHS at the moment with the doctors. There's a slightly unfortunate fact that when I was working as a doctor in 2010, I was earning 25% more in real terms than a doctor doing exactly the same job today. So doctors are saying, quite rightly, we don't think this is fair. We should at least be getting paid what people were 15 years ago, and the government are saying, greedy, just asking for a 25% pay rise, ignoring the fact that the pay's been denuded by that same 25% over a fair period of time, and that's one of the reasons that doctors are leaving, because if the pros are so outweighed by the cons, and no one goes into the profession for the money. There are a lot more efficient ways of converting all those excellent exam results into cash than going via medical school. But when, I don't know, it's like you say, when you can't even pay the basics, when you're moving further and further and further out of the city in order to be able to afford your rent, at some point you're like, actually, maybe there's another way, and there's a lot of traffic, one-way tickets to Australia, New Zealand from the UK.
Hey, and it's in our primary healthcare as well. I was talking to a doctor the other day, and he sort of said, well, I said, I was just that shortage of primary healthcare, and he said, well, to be frank, he said, if I've got 1,000 people on my books, then I can barely kind of pay the rent and do everything, for the premises and pay the staff and everything else and give myself a reasonable wage. He said, so instead I take on 2,000 and I can't cope with them and they are not getting the level of care that they should. And you just sort of went, God, it's just everywhere, really.
Yeah, no, it's sad to hear. You want to go to your doctor and think that you're getting the absolute best care, unconstrained by concerns like that. You don't want. Do you really want your healthcare staff to be stressed out that they've taken on too many patients, their appointments are too short, and they know that just because that's the only way to pay the gas bill at the surgery? And do you really want your healthcare staff who are doing your operation to have half their mind taken up by how they're going to that week's childcare? It's none of it makes sense.
No, exactly. I mean, I saw your comment about the potential that your book has turned some people away from a career in medicine. Does that kind of bother you?
I'm pleased. I'm pleased because I think that we talk about informed consent in medicine. That's the biggest thing. So you're having an operation. They tell you this is why you're having the operation. This is what it's going to help you with, and here are the risks: bleeding, infection, anaesthetic, blah blah blah. And then you weigh it up and you go, okay, no, I still want the operation. That makes sense. I don't think that I or sort of anyone my generation back home went into medicine with proper informed consent about what they were getting themselves into. I went in with a rose-tinted view of it, and particularly with in terms of the emotional aspect of the job and the toll that would take on me on a personal level on a daily basis. And I think potentially I might have. I think I'd have probably still done medicine. I'd have probably found a less high-octane version of medicine than working on the labour ward. And so I'm keen that through my books and the things I do, people have a sort of an accurate, fair reflection of what the job actually looks like and feels like and means. And so I've had messages, not a huge number, but a bit of hate mail from generally like parents or grandparents said, my son, daughter, niece, nephew, wanted to do medicine. And then they read your book and now they don't. And my answer to that is good, because if that book's going to put you off medicine, then medicine is really going to put you off medicine. And I think we've got a responsibility to people choosing any career, particularly if we're investing a lot of cash in getting them to that point, in making sure that they know what the career actually is.
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry, people come and ask me about politics and I want to be a politician, and I put every single one person off. No, don't go there. Don't do it. Do you miss it?
I miss it hugely. I miss like the thing I was saying before about the reason you do it in the first place, to help people. That never goes away. And now I work in the arts. The arts have the most enormous value. I can't imagine what life would be like without the arts in my life. But you'd have to have quite an ego as a comedian to try and pretend that what you do there is as important as what a doctor, a midwife, and nurse does on a labour ward. And so I miss the feeling that even when I was driving home 3 hours late, splattered in blood, winding the window down in the car just so I could stay awake, radio blaring, I still had a smile on my face because I did that useful thing. And I do miss that. And I suspect that once this career of mine in writing, performing dries up at some point, I'll end up going back in some form, probably not on to a labour ward, but maybe in terms of education or policy or something to give a bit back.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and for what it's worth, of my 2 cents worth, I would say that I believe that what you've done with the book, with speaking like you have today so openly and doing what you're doing, you're helping change a culture that is so absolutely significant and what we need more than anything. So I think you're doing a heck of a lot of good. So thank you very much.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you very much.
We are so excited to have you coming for the New Zealand International Comedy Festival next week. Okay, for more information on the festival and Adam's show, you can head to comedyfestival.co.nz. And that's it for another episode of Ask Me Anything. You can get in touch with me by emailing askpaula@nzherald.co.nz. Feel free to send me through your questions for the podcast or any thoughts you have. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Make sure you follow Ask Me Anything on iHeartRadio. Thanks for listening. I'm Paula Bennett. Ask Me Anything. Goodbye.